Welcome. We are broadcasting live from the mothership. You are tuned in and listening to Starseed Energy Radio with your host Jonah Bolt. Starseed Energy Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. Starseed Energy Radio goes live in 3, 2, 1.
And what's up, Spaceship Earth? Thanks for tuning in. You are now receiving a live transmission from Starseed Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. I'm your host, Jonah Bolt, the Octorian Starseed. Today is Monday, September 14th, 2015. We had the ending of the Shemitah last night, or I should say the beginning or the ending of the seven-year cycle. Hope everyone had a good weekend and a happy New Year's to the Jewish listeners out there, including my friends and family. Hope everyone had an awesome weekend. We have lots of news to cover, and we also will be joined by a special guest. We did have another guest, but apparently she got involved with something else late last night, and we can't get her on the phone, but that's okay. We're going to replace her with another amazing guest, but before we do that, let's start the show with our quote of the day. This is your life, this is your country, and if you want to keep it safe, you need to get involved. That's right. That quote by Aaron Schwartz, who passed in 2013. Shout out to Aaron. Once again, this is your life, this is your country, and if you want to keep it safe, you need to get involved. Aho, Star Brother. With that, we're going to get started with the news with the Daily Download. We're joined by our very own Ryan Matthew Durnick. But before we get started with the news, I just want to give a shout out to Starseed Radio and also to bellwetherpost.com. Check those websites out for your latest news and updates. I also want to plug our Synergy event happening this month. It's 2 weeks away. Check out synergyoneness.com. Our first event is with Dave Parker from the Free Energy Party, Dan Winter, and also David Sarita and Sterling Allen from New Energy Systems. We have a stellar lineup. It's a 4-hour webinar talking about free energy, what is energy, and how do we apply these types of energies now. This is going to be a 5-part series for each month. The next months, we're doing all the elements: fire, earth, wind, water, and ether. So check out synergyoneness.com. Reserve your spot now. There's limited seating. I wish we could have more people, but we can't. And there's also some amazing guests to be announced coming up soon. I just spoke to Little Grandmother this morning. Awesome. She was the first person, one of the truth keepers I heard my truths from 7 years ago. And it's been 7 years in the making. It's finally talked to her in the Netherlands this morning. It was so awesome. So shout out to Little Grandmother and her website, Tribe of Many Colors. We are the Rainbow Tribe, and we are coming back to the planet. We definitely have some big events happening this month, so let's jump into some news with Ryan Matthew Durnick. Good morning, Star Brother Ryan. How are you today?
Good morning, Jonah. How you doing?
Doing good. Fired up. I'm glad I got to see you over the weekend, even though for a short time. Stopped by the office last night at Starseed headquarters. So thanks again for coming out. And let's get started. What's happened with Mother Gaia over the weekend?
All right, solar activity as follows. The sun is being unusually quiet still, despite the emergence of a new and unstable sunspot, AR2415. The sun is very, very quiet. There hasn't been any strong flares in weeks, and the sun's X-ray output is very low. No forecasters estimate a small chance, 10% chance of M-class solar flare. And on September 14th, and on September 13th, there was a very interesting event that occurred, as we know, with the Shemitah cycle and such. The sun was eclipsed not once but twice, and no one on his Earth has ever seen something like this. It was only visible from Earth's orbit. NASA Solar Dynamics Observatory recorded the event. So any sky watchers that witnessed that yesterday, I'm sure it was a sight to be had with regards to taking photographs and such with your telescope. In regards to other goings on in the near future, besides the partial solar eclipse that blocked out the sun, stargazers are getting ready for the upcoming event, which is the blood moon and supermoon, and that will be tentatively occurring in the upcoming about September 27th to the 28th. There will be a number of strange goings on. So this is an event to be had. It marks the fourth blood moon, or the tetrad, And it will also coincide with a supermoon, and as well as a lunar eclipse. So you have a blood moon, a supermoon, and a lunar eclipse, which will mean that the moon will be at its darkest and lightest it's been all year in the same night, which will be a very interesting event indeed. Onto Earth changes in regards to seismic activity. There was a 4.9 magnitude earthquake 29 kilometers west-northwest of Haque, Panama, a 5.0 magnitude earthquake 227 kilometers northwest of Lautoka, Fiji, a 4.9 magnitude earthquake 191 kilometers south-southeast of L'Esperance Rock, New Zealand, a 4.7 magnitude earthquake 69 kilometers east-southeast of Lakeview, Oregon, a 4.5 magnitude earthquake 15 kilometers southwest of El Sauce, Nicaragua, 4.9 magnitude earthquake 37 kilometers northwest of Taltal, Chile, a 4.7 magnitude earthquake 139 kilometers east-northeast of Nidoe Island in Fiji, and a 4.7 magnitude earthquake 39 kilometers north of Camana, Peru. On to other interesting events going on seismically over the weekend. Actually, there was a 6.6 magnitude earthquake in the Gulf of California. Luckily, it was not sizable enough to really warrant any kind of tsunami warnings, though it was a sizable earthquake nonetheless. And also, it was followed by a couple aftershocks that measured 4.9 magnitude and 5.3 magnitude. According to emergency service officials from Los Mochis in northern Sonora, describing the earthquake as being reasonably strong. So, as always, Mother Gaia is always in a state of change. And in regards to other aspects going on in regards to Mother Gaia, there's new studies coming out that the worst case scenario, if we burn all remaining fossil fuels, the Antarctica ice sheet would melt entirely, raising sea level 200 feet. Of course, this won't occur. It would occur over a relatively short period of time in geologic time, only 1,000 years. And this peer-reviewed study title it sounded more like something out of a dystopic sci-fi movie. But from what Ken Caldera, a climate scientist at the Carnegie Institution for Science and an author on the paper, published last Friday in the Journal of Science and Advances, believes the first time he and his colleagues have shown there are enough fossil fuels still in the ground to melt effectively all the Antarctic ice sheet, resulting in that 200-foot increase in sea level. Now, initially, lately, it's only been rising maybe a couple of maybe an inch or so, but between 2 and 3 feet by the end of the century, the rise estimates are what it could eventually become. So this is something that's notable. And then after that, it could be a foot per decade, amounting to about 100 feet of sea level rise over the following 1,000 years. And that's why it's being stated anywhere from 1,000 years to 10,000 years under this business as usual scenario, not using any kind of renewable forms of energy, we will see the oceans rise 200 feet. So partially it's because all the sea level rise initially because the ice sheet would melt, and then because of thermal expansion. Because when you heat sea surface temperatures, you have a thermal expansion of the oceans. Just no different than you heating up when you heat up air and it expands. No differently in that regard. Now, another instance in regards to Earth changes, Japanese volcano Mount Aso on the island of Kyushu erupted unexpectedly, and of course now flights are being diverted in and around the volcanic eruption because it sent a mile-high plume of ash and smoke into the air. As power companies said, the recently restarted Sendai nuclear power plant would be unaffected. They said not to worry. The volcano itself is at a height of 5,222 feet, so just shy of a mile high in regards to the height of the volcano. And so the Kyushu Electric Power Company said, don't worry, this is not going to have any initial ramifications on our power facility and business as usual. Let's just keep doing things that are very caustic and detrimental to human life on the planet, like having nuclear power plants run. Like I'm not trying to hamper or be an anti-capitalist here. I think that there's definitely venues like net zero power generator, for instance, and other ways like geothermal that Iceland and other countries already utilize in regards to sequestering very sustainable forms of renewable energy instead of business as usual, extracting oil from the earth, which causes problems with earthquakes because when you're fracking, as we've talked about, Jonah, that it's a snowball effect, if you will.
And people love fracking, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to have earthquakes, and who doesn't want to rupture your aquifer system?
Oh, and don't forget about the water, the beautiful methane chemical-laced water that you can light on fire that everyone gets.
Yeah, you can light it out of your faucet. It's tasty to drink. It causes cancer among the other diseases. So it's good for you. I think we should totally transition to some, as I said, another sustainable form of energy.
I just want to say it again. I think fracking's the dumbest thing to drill down and pierce the Earth's crust. I know I say it all the time, but it is. Whoever thought of that, I know we came up with the name. I forget who it was who thought of it. I think we made him the Game of Thrones person today. Total idiot.
Did.
Anyways, please continue.
Absolutely. Well, and now in the stock market goings on around the world, specifically the United States, Wall Street lower, and this is really an ongoing effect of the Chinese data, weak Chinese data. The Fed is being eyed for the upcoming Wednesday meeting, where they're going to most likely raise the interest rate, and there's fear that when this happens, that it's going to cause a whole myriad of effects, like weakening the dollar, causing people to not want to spend as much, causing effects on real estate and the housing market. So there's a lot of fear, not the fear that you would want. Volatility is people like volatility in the markets, but this is very uneasy volatility where there's a lot of factors going on. Aside from that, last Friday it was noted by Associated Press that China, ever since the Treasury bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds have taken a hit and they're slightly devalued. People don't know this. China holds $3.7 trillion of U.S. debt in the form of U.S. Treasury bonds. But don't worry, they're dumping them into the markets and flooding the markets with some of them right now. Let's see if that picks up in a fervor pitch. And this is just, if that occurs, people Google Jim Rickards. He's an economic financial analyst. He also has worked for such agencies as CIA, and he also has a hedge fund company up in New York City. He talks about that this is one way of economic or currency warfare, where China would flood the markets with treasury bonds and thereby causing basically a runaway train effect. And at the same time, you would have what we're having going on in the Middle East with Assad, the regime, everything going on. Besides Assad, the turmoil that has occurred because of botched foreign policies that we've been a part of by going in and trying to stabilize the Middle East under the false auspices of a war on terror that has actually now caused true and real fundamentalist terror initiatives going on in the Middle East, and this is just a sign of things reaching and escalating to a higher level of conflict, really, and that's why you're seeing these refugees, these refugees evading a war-torn area, not only in Syria but surrounding Middle East countries. And keep this in mind: the wealthiest Saudi Arabia being one of them countries are not housing any of them, but they are donating money. Yet they're not housing any of these refugees. And as the human flood of refugees continues to pour into the European Union countries, now they're starting to clamp down because they're like, wow, this is overwhelming. In Germany, they're putting controls on borders and having checkpoints put in because they're realizing that they're facing an unstaunchable flood of these immigrants. And on Sunday, it was reaching a breaking point.
And I just want to also say with the refugees, Ron, I heard that they're actually using some of the concentration camps to put some of these refugees.
They are. Aren't aware. You're right, Jonah.
They're using World War II Jewish concentration camps to fill up these refugees that are now crossing the border. It's out of control.
Yeah, and it's just showing the extent of the crisis that's confronting Europe, a region where decade-long policy of these open borders, once a source of pride and unity, is eroding. I mean, right now in Germany, for instance, you have a 20% immigrant population, even before this refugee crisis, to the 80% of national Germanic peoples. And only last week, Denmark temporarily closed the highway and suspended trains on the southern border with Germany, and French authorities have searched for the refugees on trains crossing from Italy. So it's really it's I hate to say it, a free-for-all in a sense of, but these people do need to find a better way of life, and I totally understand that. And let's keep this in mind: on a conscious level, we're all refugees. Okay, we're all spiritually searching.
You're absolutely right
for a better way of life in a spiritual sense.
I said that last night when someone asked me about what I think about the refugee crisis. I said, listen, we're all refugees, you know. if we could all come up with a systematic way where we can work together to create housing and stability, and this is what Starseed Technology is about, sustaining food, water, education, and power, we could actually do something for the betterment of everyone.
And I want to just shout out to an Egyptian billionaire who actually wants to buy an island to house the refugees in the Mediterranean. He wants to name the island Independence Island, and if Greece or Italy would allow him to buy this island.
Dude, that is awesome. We got to get in contact with him. What's his name?
His name is Soros, and he's a billionaire, and essentially
I got to talk to this guy.
Egypt. We got to reach out to
him. Please put me
John.
in touch with him. Yeah, I need to talk.
I'll send
to
you
this
his
guy.
information after the show.
Awesome.
But yeah, we really have to reach out to him. And aside from that, you have a Norwegian billionaire who made his money off hotels, and he is actually housing. This billionaire is housing, giving 5,000 nights free to refugees that come within Norway. I want to salute this guy as well. This gentleman is Peter Stordalen. Peter Stordalen and Suarez. These two individuals are just, I think that's what you got to do. If you have a lot, I'm not saying like give it all away, but you got to help other people to have a better way of life. And if you're able to provide that much for yourself as an individual, that I do believe that you should help other people, and that's what these two individuals are doing. So I really commend their actions.
I agree, man. It's going to take people like that to step up and allow that abundance of money, that energy to flow down to the little people. It's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. Any last minute stories, Ron, before we get to the Game of Thrones person of the day?
Yeah, actually, before I give his name, his family financed the Nazis. They were commissioned by the royal family to put down the American Revolution. They also financed the Communist Revolution in Russia, destroyed Palestine to create Israel, were behind 9/11 and the resulting wars, and they own the world's central banking system along with all of the mainstream media like New York Times and Associated Press. And they control most of the news.
It's got to be the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers. That's what
Well, you know the Rockefellers. They say competition is evil, but no, it's Evelyn Rothschild.
Oh,
hey, Evelyn Rothschild.
Game of Thrones first day.
We salute
Evelyn
you,
Rothschild.
you global elite scumbag.
Oh. Well, let's keep it real. Yes, global elite scumbag. Yes, thank you. Thank you for paving the planet with money and fiat currency and propping us all up on a fake system that's going to come down probably really soon. Thanks for that.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, as always, thank you for your daily reporting. Check out bellwetherpost.com for Ryan's latest news and updates, and also starseedradio.com. We have his Twitter feed up on there. You can check it out. And as always, Star Brother, thank you again for your reporting, and we'll speak to you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Jonah. You have a great day.
You too. And with that, we're going to bring on our next guest who's joining us from South Carolina. Miss Wendy Owens has been an advocate for truth and sustainability since I've known her about 7 years now. And she's working on some amazing projects. So I asked her to come on the show and talk about some of the new stuff she's working on and some of the events that she's helping organize. With that, Star Sister Wendy, you on the air?
What's up, Starbro? How you doing?
Doing awesome. Doing great. Thank you. If you would, give the little listeners a background, Wendy, on just your service the last, 10, 20 years. You've been awakened for quite some time and putting together conscious events. So if you would, tell us a little background and then lead right into what you're doing today, please.
Okay, yeah, definitely, Starbrother. I had an awakening back in 2007, and it was through the electronic music scene, actually. I was listening to Boards of Canada and drove up to Paris Mountain in South Carolina, and I got on the mountain and took my shoes off and put my feet on the earth for the first time in I don't know when, and I was near an analog TV tower, so I sat down on the earth, I put my head on the ground, and everything started activating. It was a huge download. I didn't know what was going on. So at that particular time when I stood up and came to practically, from this experience, my heart honed into Western North Carolina, Asheville. So I've been living in 2 states since 2007 and have been a part of several activations, including the 11-11-11 activation in Asheville. And, I hold space in both areas, just connecting people on the grid. I'm a grid worker and a grid networker. I'm with Appalachian Chapter of Dowsers, the Evolver Network, and write for several conscious publications. And my heart is raising the vibration and awareness and consciousness and bringing in green grid consciousness, especially in areas where, it's not so fluent like it is in Asheville. So, I am in the Oconee County area and Pickens County area near Clemson, doing a lot of grid work, bringing people together, and we've really been focusing on working with the land and letting the history of this land come through, which is exceptionally interesting because this is Cherokee land, but it's not been given the credit like Cherokee, North Carolina, but there's been a lot of bloodshed on this land, a lot of atrocities, and there's been a lot of healing. With recent festivals such as Gratifying Connection, transformational festivals that have happened in Oconee County and Westminster, where 5 generations of my family are from, I know that prayers are being answered. So I've seen so many miracles of manifestation. I have so much gratitude in my heart because, the Spirit does hear a prayer, and the community is starting to come together and synergize huge visions for the upstate. So one of those visions is going to be at Clemson University on the 9th of October. It's an event we're doing called Return of the Ancestors Illuminating the Heart Well. The Heart Well is actually a beautiful lake that is in Oconee County, and Oconee County means land by the water in Cherokee. There was a nuclear power plant put there, Duke Power, that actually covered up the history of the land. Duke Power had an agreement with the archaeologists that were doing the dig that they could continue to find the remnants and find all the information that they had where they were digging. And Duke Power actually broke that agreement and told the archaeologists that they wanted to go ahead and flood out the land and create the dam because they couldn't wait to get the nuclear silos on the land and create Duke Power world of energy. Well, my heart prayer has been, since I've been a young child, realizing what nuclear power was and knowing at a very young age that it was not good for plants, humans, and animals. And the fact that Duke Power covered up Cherokee history here is another wavelength of why we're doing energy work here and why we've done so much ceremony. So we're very excited about doing this event at Clemson. This is going to be honoring the Cherokee history, the heart of the heart well, which is essential. Also bringing in green, sustainable consciousness with alternative energy. And you're going to be joining us, Jonas. I'm really excited about that. And our grandmother, Karina, is going to be joining us as well.
This is a very, very special event because it's really focusing on what I feel and you feel, obviously what resonates is dealing and working with the indigenous Native Americans of this country that really have been forgotten about in many ways, and many of them don't even have power through their reservations. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So as much support and love as we can and awareness we want to bring to the Native Americans of this true land.
That is so true, brother. I mean, there's been so many atrocities and so much hidden in this area, but there is a great awakening happening. And what I honestly feel like in my soul, and I'm asking for your listeners to please pray, put this on their altars, light a candle for our ceremony, is this is all about resonating the green grid, eliminating the greed grid, because human greed has no boundaries. And where we're standing right now, potentially with the university, and bringing these new technologies that you're going to be bringing in for data acquisition and also letting the students co-create and work in conjunction with these new technologies and bring them in, there are great strides to, in my heart, bring in sustainable energy on a major wavelength. Duke has been talking about clear-cutting our mountains in western North Carolina, and I say our because I live in 2 states, so this is very close to home. They want to bring in these high-voltage transformers, and, they would create the excess amount of EMF frequencies. And I really feel like where we're at right now on this planet, that we have no excuse. We don't need nuclear power anymore. We don't need coal energy anymore. There are great minds out there with wonderful technologies, sustainable technologies, thinkers and makers, and people that are literally repurposing technology. And there's huge downloads coming into how we can do this. I was watching a video last night, just happened to stumble upon it, with Ringway Malkiewicz talking about how we can work in conjunction with technology in a good way, in an ancient way.
That's right.
And I believe
ancient way. Yes.
Exactly. And as long as it's sustainable and it's beneficial to plants, humans, and animals, then we can still have our convenience, but it wouldn't as disharmonic. It wouldn't be, we have disharmony now with a lot of the electricity and smart meters and EMF and Wi-Fi and cell phones.
And where can people find out about this event, Wendy? We have about 30 seconds left before music starts coming on.
Okay, awesome. Well, people can hit me up personally. We don't have a website for this event yet, but they can hit me up personally on Wendy Owens Facebook Asheville Network. And if you can put the link, and I'll send you some links too, and get people connected.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much, Wendy, for doing the service and putting this event together. And we'll have you back on soon in the next week or two to talk about the event some more. Thanks again for coming on.
Awesome. Much love.
Even the Declaration of Independence was made on hemp paper. Thomas Jefferson at hemp fields. Let me tell you all the things organically grown hemp yields. Jack Herring tried to tell us the news.
Hello, citizens of America. We are anonymous, and we have been observing as your country's leaders have lied to you and placed your freedom and your constitutional rights into jeopardy. We are very disappointed about this, and we have decided to take steps against what you are facing. The world is watching America. We are also watching. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect.
All right, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Star Seed Radio. Shout out to our good friends Anonymous out there doing their magical light work through the ether internet. Please check out starseedradio.com for the latest news and updates, and check out our Synergy event, synergyoneness.com. It's an amazing event. I have 4 of the top leading people in energy field talking about all different types of energy. What is it? Coming up this month, limited seating, synergyoneness.com. Or check out starseedtechnologies.com for our free information on free energy. We have PDFs we could send you, and also free samples of shungite. Give us a call, toll free, 888-400-2328. Also, we are joined by our next guest. He's been on the show many times, and we love having him back because he's an advocate for truth and involved with many different Native American initiatives, just like we were talking about with Miss Wendy Owens. So it's always good to have Ted on the line. Ted, good morning. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, Jonah. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing good. Had a great weekend. We had the ending of the Shemitah last night. We have the rare fourth blood moon coming up. So lots of activity this month. How's everything your way in New York?
Everything's good on this new year, and it looks like this month is shaping up to be a really incredible, just coming together in all over the country. There's just a lot of sort of revived energy and a lot more experience in our global community of workers of justice.
Yeah, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that, Ted, if you could talk a little bit about some of the events that are happening, what the Shemitah is, the blood moon. We have the Pope visiting with Obama, first time in history in the White House, talking to Congress, first time in history, lots of prophecies, lots of talk, lots of chatter. A lot of my guests have been talking about this month. Give us your background on what you feel is happening. To me, I think it's an opportunity, no matter what happens, for humanity to shift our awareness and consciousness in a positive direction versus like 9/11, where we shifted it towards a war on terror direction. So what do you think is going to happen this month? What are you hearing on your end? And what can you tell us about the beginning, the new year, and the cycle of the Shemitah?
Boy, this what I think it's really up to everybody. And from what I understand, and this is an anniversary of a lot of important documents. One that I find to be the most clarifying is something called the Promise of World Peace. It was the first public statement by the Baha'is in basically like the elected leadership of the Baha'i. And I think that actually will give people a lot of insight because this is the 30-year anniversary of that publication, and it really speaks to the universal responsibility of everybody. And it's this kind of thing where you have that domino effect, and everybody is connected together. So each country kind of has its own challenges, and I think that it's really about us coming together and realizing that all of our religions and traditions have the same foundation, that we can start to trust each other on that level and recognize that the mechanisms for peace are starting to take a shape, but we need to express like what are all of the fine details of peace that need to be realized. And if we ignore those things and we ignore our power as civil society to lead, then we might just get handed the same raw deal, and it would just be a sort of pseudo peace. But this is a vital moment where we know that through global warming research, and it's just a physical fact that we pump carbon into the atmosphere. It captures more energy, and that's not a bad thing. But if it's out of control, it's a bad thing. And what it's doing to our ecosystems, especially the ecosystems we get food from, is it's causing desertification, and where there are these man-made scarcity issues, it pits people into situations where they start to fight. And that was what happened at the very beginning of the Syrian conflict. Actually, there was a food shortage because of a drought that was highly unusual. And those things are going to keep happening. So if we don't put these political mechanisms of peace, and that really seems to be a shot at that, but the citizens need to be we need to focus in our local governments, in our states, and recognize that we actually have a lot of power right now to help implement that peace at home. And in America, like, the biggest thing that we need to focus on is the cancer of prejudice that is the real core of what is getting in our way in participating in this moment in evolution.
I have to agree with that. I think it's a big thing is still people, I'm white, I'm black, I'm this, I'm that, I'm Jewish, I'm Muslim. And at the end of the day, no matter what your belief system is, what religion or color your skin, like, the planet is just totally going down the toilet right now. And if we don't come together as a whole, as humanity, as we're all humans, and that's really the core of what it is, we're all the same, we're all humans, we're going to be, in a position where, a lot of lives may be lost. Look at the refugees happening right now. I mean, it's becoming very destabilized around the planet. And if we don't come up with a plan of action collectively soon, look at Fukushima. Japan just all by itself, like one of the greatest catastrophes ever on this planet, and who's helping them? That should be a world issue, a world, coming together to support and help fix that. But it's not. It's Japan's fault. A tsunami hit them, and that's the attitude of the planet is, it's your war, you deal with it, and we're not looking at it as a collective. I mean, they have the UN Council, but we know what that's about. That's a global elite plan to roll Agenda 21 so nicely, like they're doing in all the cities. Everyone thinks, sustainable communities, Agenda 21. They're using nice words we like, sustainable. It's like, once again, they're just duping everyone. They're tricking everybody into a elitist program, and It's nothing about coming together. It's not for the people. It's why it's held in secrecy and things like that. I mean, it's ridiculous what's happening. But if the people don't collectively come together, it's really going to be a bad situation for the planet as a whole. And Mother Gaia ain't going to put up with it much longer, you know? If you would, Ted, tell us a little history about this event coming up that's really amazing, the Bretton Woods event, you know, your involvement in it, and a little history on that, if you would, please.
Yeah, so Bretton Woods, the original gathering, was like one of the scariest things that ever happened. It was after World War II, which those of us who are educating ourselves understand World War II was, you know, really just a nice banker's like wet dream to pit governments against each other and sell weapons to both sides. But after America won that kind of constructed failure, the world leadership of like our actual political sovereigns, which that's the thing, is that nations, there isn't there's no such thing as like a complete independence for a country where all the countries are interdependent, but they all have sovereignty. They don't have like this renegade sovereignty that makes it so they can just do whatever the hell they want to other countries. That's kind of insane. But these sovereigns came together, and that's what's really interesting, is that a lot of the political economic theorists and financial sort of lever pullers need the sovereigns of the world to agree to that agenda. And that's what's really what happened at Bretton Woods, and it was 1944 or 45, and it was in order to try to create a stabilizing economy after World War II. So 44 countries came together, and they decided to basically put all of their bets on the American dollar as a reserve currency. So they put gold inside of the American banking system, which was already perverted from the unconstitutional Federal Reserve Act, which if you look at our political leadership at that time, they said, we can't believe that we just frickin' handed away the entire country. It was sort of like above their heads, and they screwed up hardcore. But that kind of trickery played out with Bretton Woods, and it was our debt-based system, which is not a sovereign system. A sovereign country doesn't finance itself on debt. That's just insane. You finance yourself on equity, and instead of enslaving citizens and using them as like collateral for essentially to borrow.
You mean like every citizen born in the U.S. that has a bank name and number on it? You mean like that, Ted?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's our signature. Like
right.
Our signatures uphold this debt-based currency system. And really, in macroeconomics, and this is what the thing is that Keynes, who was the economist who was really calling for this, he did understand, like, if you use a sovereign currency, and we actually harmonize that exchange, like, human affairs will be super fluid. But the thing is in that meeting they said, yeah, we don't want a public bank, we want a private bank. So it's like, assholes, you know, just like take the plan and just totally invert it and then pretend everything's okay, while somebody's in control of the spigot of our common wealth. And so this gathering that's happening now is in the same location that the IMF and the World Bank were founded. But it's being brought together by some people of goodwill who have called out actually some writers from the Council of Foreign Relations who said, we need a new Bretton Woods for a new global currency. And they said, well, yeah, we're going to do it ourselves. So these regular citizens came together and said, we are going to meet at Bretton Woods and introduce to the public this bill called the Common Sense Bill in New Hampshire that's passed, what's it called? Council, or it's a committee. It's passed committee, and it's going into New Hampshire Senate to take back the charter of the State Bank of New Hampshire, so that now, though they're not getting directly at the Fed, they're getting at where the Fed is inserted itself into the state level of governance, and they're taking back their charter of their bank, so that the bank now is going to invest in the state, not make loans to the state. It will invest and then use those investments and the benefit of those investments and reinvest the profits into public works. This is what this is what banks are supposed to do, that are controlled by our public officials. The banks are supposed to work for the country, not the country work for the banks. And that's what every single conflict in America has been over. So it doesn't matter what party it is. This meeting is calling together just super veteran civil society leadership. Martin Luther King's grandson, Gandhi's grandson, Bernard Lietaer, who is a top leading thinker in Bitcoin. He was the man who started the local currency network that then became the model for the euro. The euro is not perfect at all. It's kind of scary the way it's applied, just like, USDA organic. But I know the farmer who started USDA organic, and he hates it, but he got it started. And same with this guy, Bernard Lietaer. He's a very strong thinker, and is calling out all of these currency scams, and is coming to Bretton Woods, and it's later this month. So there's this is actually an incredible. This is our sovereign right as citizens. This is our duty and our right to put this together, because we all know, okay, things are coming together. It's kind of like year 2000. We were putting the pieces together in the year 2000. Like, man, this guy George Bush is crazy. Our acceptance of his leadership was just crashing, and people were starting to just understand what kind of leadership we were having to deal with. I feel that this is kind of a similar time, except that people are mastering these means of communication, and when we understand there are actual avenues for us to take, and we understand what happened in 2001 and 2008, these engineered crises. It's very important that we recognize the value of taking back our banks by state, because if this bank bill in New Hampshire passes, there's a stronghold for Americans in terms of our ability to govern our own finances at all levels. And if that state secures its bank, we'll have two states, North Dakota and New Hampshire, that are not going to be affected by any crash that we know is about to come. If you simply look online, there's a good search. If you look up $700 trillion in Forbes, there's an article in Forbes, also in Bloomberg News, about the $700 trillion derivatives bubble. Most of our economy right now is built on a quant, super insane gambling scheme that makes the 2008 crash look like batting practice. And the North Dakota, which has the same banking model, that's the one state in the union that actually has control of its bank. They weren't affected by the 2008 crash. They might not have their other foundational pillars, things like Citizens United would still threaten a state that has its bank. We have to end this notion of corporate, human right. Corporations don't have the rights of people. They have rights, but they're not human beings. And things like that we have to address, and prejudice we have to deeply address, in historical genocide, which is really the reason why we have wealth. Besides the fact that we are a diverse people that is hyper-productive. So these kinds of basic elements are kind of, we need to start to reconcile these responsibilities, this ability to respond. And then, of course, there's all the other levels of our action, of what we can do to create our own systems of food security. I'm not meaning when there's a crash. Right now, we're in a food insecure situation. In the states like, I just heard that California has forced Monsanto to label Roundup as cancer-causing because it's a fact. So anything that's sprayed with Roundup or that has Bt toxin, GMO engineered, basically GMOs are engineered to be pesticides. So the food that has these genetically modified traits, the traits are put in and sort of, violate the genome in order to create toxins inside the food, because it's cheaper to do that. And to make it so that the food can handle even more toxins sprayed on it so that a total moron can farm a ton of acres. I'm not saying people who use Roundup are morons. I'm saying that corporations can be run by idiots and still run a profit when they should just go down and die in the market. But things like this, I think they're really coming together at Bretton Woods, and these eco-village best practices in a state like New Hampshire is kind of exciting. And these local economy building best practices are being shared. So they're really, it's not just about the state bank policy and reclaiming the charter so that the bank of that state has to work for the people and is backed by the will and the trust of the citizens, not enslaving and indebting the citizens. All levels of civil society actually are figuring out in this meeting like how they find a cohesive expression, and it's pretty awesome. It's a real miracle that this gathering is happening.
That's amazing, and it is a miracle that people are coming together like this. Gandhi's grandson, Martin Luther King. I mean, it's just a stellar line of the lineages of change for this planet. So I'm still hoping myself to go out there and, I just got introduced to a new currency myself. That's a gold-backed currency that's coming out soon in the next few months. And when you see stuff like that happening, it's very exciting because we have this opportunity to transfer our fiat currency money into gold-backed currency or another currency that's backed by actually something that has value. And at least we could start, creating and bartering and trading and bringing back a system that works for the people. And that's what it's about. There's also another event happening this weekend coming up, which is Symbiosis Gathering. Check out symbiosisgathering.com. They've been running for 10 years, and they do amazing workshops, permaculture. They have music. They have yoga, meditation, all sorts of things. We have a guest coming on, Sophia Moon, tomorrow. Is going to talk about that. But it's these type of events, Ted, just like Bretton Woods, that is just equally and as much important as the next, because these transformational festivals, as you know, are re-educating people to a new way of living. That's what's really going on. I don't want people to get misrepresented like, oh, Burning Man's a big drug fest and everybody just goes and gets naked. Woo! That is far from what happened to me at Burning Man. What happened to me was I experienced a new system and a way of living, which is a gift economy. No money, no cash accepted, and everything was provided for. That system can be implemented worldwide if we come together. So Symbiosis and Bretton Woods and these gatherings that are happening are just monumental, because as they happen more and more and more, people are waking up more and more. It's only going to be the matter of time before we hit the 100th monkey. And that's what we're all going for, is that awareness and consciousness shift for the whole planet. And we're going to be joined by Sophia Moon tomorrow, who's been doing ceremony all over Colombia and South America. And I know you're involved with the indigenous people and doing ceremony. And if you would, Ted, give a little bit background on the importance of what ceremony is. A lot of listeners hear the word ceremony and they think it just has to be done by Native Americans, or it just is something special. If you would, we have a few minutes left. Talk about the importance of ceremony, and especially now during these times.
Just the ceremony we always carry with us no matter what. So every single moment of our lives is a ceremony. Every thought that we have, it's going to turn into that little tiny, those first cells of a heartbeat that start in the womb sometime in the future, or that are happening within the wombs of countless new mothers in this second. So every the ceremonies, we do need to be respectful of. They're a gift, and they're a gift from the indigenous peoples to the world, despite indigenous peoples all over the world being oppressed and genocided, even right now. And these medicine traditions are something we can only learn about through direct experience. There's no real way to even describe their purpose or compared to actually experiencing it. And I think that especially for Americans to understand what kinds of fallacies run through our thinking system as a culture, these are very important psychological medicines. From the grandfather and grandmother plants, ayahuasca and peyote, these are, thank God, and some very insightful people in the American government have at least peyote has been recognized as a religious right for indigenous peoples. And the thing that I've learned over time is that there are protocols that are very important that help us as a culture start to integrate and understand the lessons from the medicine. And what I understood is that in the traditional practices in the South, ayahuasca is not given as something somebody can also give unless they have been practicing it for over 30 years. That's the tradition. And it's really important to know and understand where something came from in order to properly apply it for its intended purpose and its power. Because it is a gift, so you don't want to misuse a gift, but you also don't want to put an idolatry on a gift. So we're still learning. I find myself there's ceremony is learning with all of the elements and finding a way to really reflect on my own patterns.
That's a key part to it, reflecting on your own patterns, Ted. That's really the core of why we do ceremony, is to learn more about self. And in learning about self and experiencing self, we can then project that to the world. Thank you so much for coming on. And Brenton Wood's event, please, people, check that out. And as always, you can get in touch with Ted Edward Twitchell Hall III on Facebook or his Twitter feed. And as always, Star Brother, thanks for coming on and spreading truth and doing what you do. We'll have you back on soon.
I love you, man.
There's a public outcry for people who want a better planet, and there are powers that be that let the people panic. Look at the Gulf of Japan, could they have really planned it? Heading for the iceberg like the Titanic. Atlantic mystery, Atlantis white from history. The truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy. Space Odyssey, look into the anomalies and you will find
Lately it's only been rising maybe a couple of maybe an inch or so, but between 2 and 3 feet by the end of the century, the rise estimates are what it could eventually become. So this is something that's notable. And then after that, it could be a foot per decade, amounting to about 100 feet of sea level rise over the following 1,000 years. And that's why it's being stated anywhere from 1,000 years to 10,000 years under this business as usual scenario, not using any kind of renewable forms of energy. We will see the oceans rise 200 feet. So partially it's because all the sea level rise initially because the ice sheet would melt, and then because of thermal expansion. Because when you heat sea surface temperatures, you have a thermal expansion of the oceans. Just no different than you heating up when you heat up air and it expands. No differently in that regard. Now. Another instance in regards to Earth changes, Japanese volcano Mount Aso on the island of Kyushu erupted unexpectedly, and of course now flights are being diverted in and around the volcanic eruption because it sent a mile-high plume of ash and smoke into the air, as power companies said the recently restarted Sendai nuclear power plant would be unaffected. They said not to worry. The volcano itself is at a height of 5,222 feet, so just shy of a mile high in regards to the height of the volcano. And so the Kyushu Electric Power Company said, don't worry, this is not going to have any initial ramifications on our power facility and business as usual. Let's just keep doing things that are very caustic and detrimental to human life on the planet, like having nuclear power plants run. Like I'm not trying to hamper or be an anti El Sauce, Nicaragua, 4.9 magnitude earthquake, 37 kilometers northwest of Tal, Chile, a 4.7 magnitude earthquake, 139 kilometers east-northeast of Nidoe Island in Fiji, and a 4.7 magnitude earthquake, 39 kilometers north of Camana, Peru. On to other interesting events going on seismically over the weekend. Actually, there was a 6.6 magnitude earthquake in the Gulf of California. Luckily, it was not sizable enough to really warrant any kind of tsunami warnings, though it was a sizable earthquake nonetheless. And also, it was followed by a couple aftershocks that measured 4.9 magnitude and 5.3 magnitude. According to emergency service officials from Los Mochis in northern Sonora, describing the earthquake as being reasonably strong. So, as always, Mother Gaia is always in a state of change. And in regards to other aspects going on in regards to Mother Gaia, there's new studies coming out that the worst case scenario, if we burn all remaining fossil fuels, the Antarctica ice sheet would melt entirely, raising sea level 200 feet. Of course, this won't occur. It would occur over a relatively short period of time in geologic time, only 1,000 years. And this peer-reviewed study title it sounded more like something out of a dystopic sci-fi movie. But from what Ken Caldera, a climate scientist at the Carnegie Institution for Science and an author on the paper, published last Friday in the Journal of Science and Advances, believes the first time he and his colleagues have shown there are enough fossil fuels still in the ground to melt effectively all the Antarctic ice sheet, resulting in that 200-foot increase in sea level. Now, initially,
by our very own Ryan Matthew Durnick. But before we get started with the news, I just want to give a shout out to Starseed Radio and also to bellweatherpost.com. Check those websites out for your latest news and updates. I also want to plug our Synergy event happening this month. It's 2 weeks away. Check out synergyoneness.com. Our first event is with Dave Parker from the Free Energy Party, Dan Winter, and also David Sarita and Sterling Allen from New Energy Systems. We have a stellar lineup. It's a 4-hour webinar talking about free energy, what is energy, and how do we apply these types of energies now. This is going to be a 5-part series for each month. The next months, we're doing all the elements: fire, earth, wind, water, and ether. So check out synergyoneness.com. Reserve your spot now. There's limited seating. I wish we could have more people, but we can't. And there's also some amazing guests to be announced coming up soon. I just spoke to Little Grandmother this morning. Awesome. She was the first person, one of the truth keepers I heard my truths from 7 years ago. And it's been 7 years in the making. That's finally talked to her in the Netherlands this morning. It was so awesome. So a shout out to Little Grandmother and her website, Tribe of Many Colors. We are the Rainbow Tribe, and we are coming back to the planet. We definitely have some big events happening this month, so let's jump into some news with Ryan Matthew Durnick. Good morning, Star Brother Ryan. How are you today?
Good morning, Jonah. How you doing?
Doing good. Fired up. I'm glad I got to see you over the weekend, even though for a short time. Stopped by the office last night at Starseed headquarters. So thanks again for coming out. And, let's get started. What's happened with Mother Gaia over the weekend?
All right, solar activity as follows. The sun is being unusually quiet still, despite the emergence of a new and unstable sunspot, AR2415. The sun is very, very quiet. There hasn't been any strong flares in weeks, and the sun's X-ray output is very low. No forecasters estimate a small chance, 10% chance of M-class solar flare. And on September 14th, and on September 13th, there was a very interesting event that occurred, as we know, with the Shemitah cycle and such. The sun was eclipsed not once but twice, and no one on his Earth has ever seen something like this. It was only visible from Earth's orbit, NASA Solar Dynamics Observatory recorded the event. So any sky watchers that witnessed that yesterday, I'm sure it was a sight to be had with regards to taking photographs and such with your telescope. In regards to other goings on in the near future, besides the partial solar eclipse that blocked out the sun, stargazers are getting ready for the upcoming event, which is the blood moon and supermoon, and that will be tentatively occurring in the upcoming about September 27th to the 28th. There will be a number of strange goings on. So this is an event to be had. It marks the fourth blood moon, or the tetrad, and it will also coincide with a supermoon, and as well as a lunar eclipse. So you have a blood moon, a supermoon, and a lunar eclipse, which will mean that the moon will be at its darkest and lightest it's been all year in the same night, which will be a very interesting event indeed. Onto Earth changes in regards to seismic activity. There was a 4.9 magnitude earthquake 29 kilometers west-northwest of Haque, Panama, a 5.0 magnitude earthquake 227 kilometers northwest of Latoka, Fiji, a 4.9 magnitude earthquake 191 kilometers south-southeast of L'Esperance Rock, New Zealand, a 4.7 magnitude earthquake 69 kilometers east-southeast of Lakeview, Oregon, a 4.5 magnitude earthquake 15 kilometers southwest of...
Welcome. We are broadcasting live from the mothership. You are tuned in and listening to Starseed Energy Radio with your host Jonah Bolt. Starseed Energy Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. Starseed Energy Radio goes live in 3, 2, 1.
And what's up, Spaceship Earth? Thanks for tuning in. You are now receiving a live transmission from Starseed Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. I'm your host, Jonah Bolt, the Octorian Starseed. Today is Monday, September 14th, 2015. We had the ending of the Shemitah last night, or I should say the beginning or the ending of the 7-year cycle. Hope everyone had a good weekend and a happy New Year's to the Jewish listeners out there, including my friends and family. Hope everyone had an awesome weekend. We have lots of news to cover, and we also will be joined by a special guest. We did have another guest, but apparently she got involved with something else late last night, and we can't get her on the phone, but that's okay. We're going to replace her with another amazing guest, but before we do that, let's start the show with our quote of the day. This is your life, this is your country, and if you want to keep it safe, you need to get involved. That's right. That quote by Aaron Schwartz, who passed in 2013. Shout out to Aaron. Once again, this is your life, this is your country, and if you want to keep it safe, you need to get involved. Aho, Star Brother. With that, we're going to get started with the news with the Daily Download. We're joined